There is an interesting thing, a thought experiment that all entrepreneurs now need to do. What was not possible yesterday that is possible today? The people who are going to find the opportunities following these major changes are going to be very, very rich.
You're listening to the Startup Podcast. This is a Reacts episode. Industry insiders having frank debates about the latest tech, politics, and business news. Whether you're a founder, investor, or operator in a startup, you'll gain insights into how current events connect to broader themes and trends that impact your startup, your investments, and your day-to-day operational decisions. The conversation starts now.
Hey, I'm Chris Saad.
Hey, I'm Amir Shevat.
And welcome to another episode of this week's Startup Podcast Reacts. On today's show, we're going to discuss OpenAI again, of course. How could we not? They had DevDay. We're going to talk about what they announced and how it changes things for founders and startups alike. We're also going to talk about OpenAI changing their corporate structure from a weird non-profit, capped profit entity to a B Corp, and the subsequent rumors about that, including Sam Altman taking 70% of this new company, their CTO and co-founder and some executives leaving, and a whole bunch of additional collateral damage and drama over at that company, as always. We're going to talk about Google hiring back an AI rockstar for $2.7 billion for an individual. We'll tell you more about who he is and why he's worth $2.7 billion. And then finally, we're going to talk about Meta Connect's announcements, including and especially their Orion AR prototype glasses, which, man, just from last week completely changed the game again on how small and how effective this form factor is going to be and how it's going to be the future of AI and augmented reality. All of this and much, much more on this week's show. Stay tuned right after the break.
Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance with SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. And it gets even better. Just for TSP listeners, you can get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's vanta.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off.
All right, before we jump into the episode, we're going to talk about the Startup Podcast Pack, which says if you've been listening to a few episodes of the show and getting value, we only ask for one thing in return, which is please rate us and review us in your favorite podcasting app. Give us a follow there and follow us on YouTube and ring the notification bell. It helps us grow the show and help more founders just like you. And also, before we get on with the show, I want to do a call out for comments. We'd like more feedback about the show. So wherever you're watching this, however you're watching this, leave a comment and tell us about how you're enjoying the show, what you like, what you don't like, or even just drop us an email from the website at tsp.show. We want to get feedback. We want to know what's working for you guys and where you'd like to see us expand our content in the future. All right, with that, let's jump straight into it. For our first set of topics, we're going to do the OpenAI update corner. It seems like we do that most weeks, but there's a lot of OpenAI news as usual this week. The first, we'll go with the least gossipy, most developer-related news first. DevDay just occurred this morning, actually, as we record. It'll probably be yesterday by the time this airs. And the big announcements from OpenAI DevDay were speech-to-speech API, basically their advanced voice mode for third-party developers, where ChatGPT or the API in this case can respond with all sorts of tones and tempos, and it can whisper, it can laugh. Now that's available to third-party developers. They've also announced fine-tuning with images, which allows you to fine-tune their image recognition and analysis with as little as 100 images, actually, which is pretty darn cool. So this allows developers to build image-based applications and tune them to their particular use cases. They've also announced automatic caching or caching, depending on your accent, on their end. So if you send them a prompt that's more or less the same, they'll respond from cache, which will actually be a faster and cheaper query. So it can reduce latency by up to 80% and the cost by 50% for long prompts. And finally, the last big announcement was what they call model distillation, the ability to create mini models that are unique to your use case, powered by or trained by their frontier models, which is something a lot of model developers, mini model developers were doing offline, doing kind of on their own. But now OpenAI has made that really easy to do right there natively in their environment. So, Amir, that's, as usual, the pace of change is pretty high, especially given some of their drama that we'll talk about a little later. What do you make of this as a former, head of developer platform for Twitter, head of developer advocacy for Slack, having a deep love for developers in your heart and your mind, I know. What do you make of these developer tools?
So this is developer relations wet dream. This is like product releasing one after the other, good value to developers. This is amazing. And Sam Altman actually tweeted the cost per token is going to be decreased by 98%, which really makes me think about, I don't know who coined it, but they said that this is going to be the most expensive you're ever going to pay for the most stupid AI API ever, which is very interesting. It's like the reverse of Moore law, where like the cost goes down and the value goes up. And I think that is very interesting for developers. So there's a lot of developers that are now thinking that using AI is too expensive, and they actually revert to running it themselves or going back from AI to non-AI. I think they need to realize that the cost of computation went down and the cost of AI will go down with it. All the other things that you talked about are amazing, like the ability to have a voice API that is fine-tuned. That opens up so many use cases. Image training opens up so many amazing use cases in factories and in security and in so many other places. So I think we're going to see a lot more startups building vertical solutions on top of what was released today.
So the tweet that you're referring to specifically says here, 98% decrease in cost per token from GPT-4 to 4.0 mini, which is, a pretty incredible decrease in price. Now, 4.0 mini, one would argue 4.0 is more capable. Mini, I'm not sure how they compare exactly to 4, but the general trend is obvious, right? You called it reverse Moore's law. I think technically it's just standard Moore's law, right? So packing in more tokens per dollar in Moore's law is, more transistors per unit of size or something. So this is an exponential curve, suffice it to say. And, we've talked many times on the show that these are exponentials on top of exponentials, right? And so maybe let's just unpack that for a second. What do we mean by exponentials on top of exponentials? Because we say that fairly casually. What that means is that the hardware is becoming exponentially more powerful, thanks to NVIDIA, right, and others. And the models are becoming exponentially more powerful. And the cost to serve the models, because of their efficiency, is becoming exponentially more efficient. And then the tooling to build these models is becoming exponentially more powerful. And the models themselves are helping to develop yet new tools and models. And so just in those few examples, you can see exponentials on top of exponentials. And then you might imagine exponentials in terms of third-party investments in the ecosystem, where more and more people are investing in the application layer and in other foundation models over time. And so this is what we mean by exponentials over exponentials. And, this is obvious maybe to many in the audience, but the human brain is just not designed to understand exponentials. We think in linear fashion. And so what that means is surprising shit's going to happen faster than you ever imagined. That's what it really actually just means in pragmatic terms. It's just going to go faster and faster and faster than you ever really expect. And it's hard for most people to predict what will happen most of the time. And so that's going to be a real crazy time to live through.
There is an interesting thing, thought experiment that all entrepreneurs now need to do, which is what was not possible yesterday that is possible today. I think that's a very interesting analysis to do. What parts of my business could become 10 times better? But in general, what couldn't have happened yesterday that could happen today? Like if you even take like the voice API and you just say, hey, could we do something that is empathetic with people with disabilities or with kids? Like there's so many interesting use cases that you could have done with just one voice that is very vanilla. And now you can do a much richer voice. Maybe you could do singing. Maybe there's so many interesting things that this opens up. And I think the people who are going to find the opportunities following these major changes are going to be very, very rich.
Yeah, but also what's going to be possible tomorrow that isn't possible today. You need to be careful in your question that you're not just filling holes in the frontier model, in the base platform, right? because you don't want to be disrupted by OpenAI. And so you've got to think about really deep, really hard problems to solve. Actually on this, there is a criticism that is in the water generally, which is, oh, that app is just an OpenAI wrapper or just a frontier model or LLM wrapper. And the CEO of Perplexity said something very interesting. I caught just a fragment of an interview with him. And he said, you know what? I'm so tired of that wrapper story. You know what? NVIDIA is just a wrapper on TSMC. And AWS is just a wrapper on NVIDIA. Microsoft Copilot is just a wrapper on GPT. And he's just like, this idea that wrappers are value free or that wrappers won't become increasingly valuable as they become more specialized is a little bit silly. And I think he's right. There is the chance that what you're doing is just filling holes, and the underlying primitive, in this case, the frontier model, may quickly cannibalize your differentiation. But if you're running uphill fast enough and specializing narrowly enough, I do think your wrapper can become valuable if you also solve the other business problems like distribution and, retention and virality and building a moat and on all this stuff over time.
I 100% agree. I think that like Netflix is a wrapper over S3, right? Basically,
That's right.
that's the fundamental of our business in tech, is that everything is a wrapper. Everything is built on top of what was built up until now. That's how the business is made. So I never ask myself whether this is a thin wrapper when I look at the business. I look about the value to the customer and the go-to-market. Like how fast can you get it out there, and what's the high value to the customer? There's some areas where I judge on technology, but these are areas where, exactly to your point, I ask myself, will this be cannibalized by one of the big players, by the incumbent, and by the entity that has the most amount of distribution? But other than that, like the Jeff Bezos coin, customer obsession is what should move the market.
It's interesting, actually, because you didn't mention the two that I personally value the most. So when I'm looking at a startup, typically very early stage, I'm looking at the team. Do I believe these people get it?
Yeah.
And they're going to make smart decisions and execute fast? And is their founder problem fit? And, it's an unpopular thing to say, but I'm looking also at pedigree, right? Are they in the right place with the right mindset, really speaking in the right ways about the right things to the right level of abstraction with the right level of confidence, but also curiosity and coachability? It's all of this ephemeral X factor. And I'm also looking for distribution and unfair advantages around distribution, right? Because this is a game of distribution in a lot of ways as well.
Of course, what you're saying is definitely true. Like you look at team, you look at TAM, you look at distribution, you look at technology. But to your point, like if you have a thin wrapper and you're going to make a lot of value to the customer and you know your business and you know your distribution, the fact that it's a thin wrapper doesn't mean anything. AI is an invisible technology if done right. People don't care if they use AI or not. They care about a great service.
You know what another name for a thin wrapper is? An MVP.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So that's all that means is they've started somewhere simple and they're going to have to build on top. All right, those are our thoughts on some of the announcements from OpenAI's DevDay. What do you think? What did you think about their APIs, their new automatic caching, their ability to distill models? What did you think about their new announcements and new capabilities for developers? But maybe more importantly, what did you think about the opportunity, the changing opportunity for startups and app developers everywhere? Jump in the comments and let us know your thoughts. Let's move on to our second topic, which is also related to OpenAI. There's been more news about OpenAI's corporate structure, which is kind of the gift that keeps on giving to us as pundits and to them as people trying to operate this company and this nonprofit and this convoluted mess. The rumors are that they're trying to rotate everything over from a nonprofit that owns a for-profit that's capped, and this weird convoluted diagram. Maybe Justin, our editor, can put the diagram up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. And they want to simplify that whole thing down to what they call a B Corp. Most companies in the US of any note are what's called C Corps. And what that means is that the shareholders, especially the board and the executive team, have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits and value creation to the other shareholders. A B Corp adds one simple sentence or concept to that, which is they have a responsibility to maximize shareholder value and to make sure that the company is upholding its mission-based goals, whatever those might be, so that they get to state their own goals. And so you might see B Corps where they have a sustainability message. They have a climate change message or a mission. And in this case, one would imagine OpenAI's mission would be to, make AGI, artificial general intelligence, available and safe for the world. So then the shareholders, the operators rather, and the board would have that commitment baked into law without a complicated and convoluted nonprofit structure. So just a few other details on this, and I want to get your feedback on this, Amir. Related to this, they're allegedly looking to raise $100 billion from some of the top companies and funds in the world, Thrive Capital, Microsoft. Apparently, Apple was in the deal, but the rumor is that they pulled out. Tiger Global. And then also allegedly, Sam Altman would be getting 7% of this new structure. And that was the word going around for a few days. But more recently, at an all hands, he called this ludicrous and said that's just not a real number and it's not true what's being reported. One last detail, because it's likely related, is that a number of executives have basically en masse quit. And this is not the first time, and it may not be the last time. But a number of executives and key people left, including Mira Murati, who is the very visible CTO and was the co-founder, as well as Bob McHugh, OpenAI's chief research officer, and Barrett Zoth, a research VP. These all happened pretty much on the same day, which is, there hasn't been this kind of attrition at a hot startup, except maybe during the times when Travis got, shoved out the back door at Uber. And that was after, a year and a half of very visible turmoil in the market. But I think the weird thing here is that this company is early in its evolution. It's on track, or it really is one of the most important companies in the world already after just 24 whatever months. And there is no visible turmoil, other than like people getting fired or quitting. It's not really clear what the hell is going on. Like, why is this happening? I have some ideas, but this is a long preamble here, Amir. What is your thoughts on the restructure, the fundraise, the 7%, and the quitting, which I think is all related, and then I'll share some thoughts as well.
Okay, awesome. So first of all, I think B Corp is okay. I invested in one B Corp, a company called Blue Sky. I think B Corp would have probably saved Twitter from being bought by Elon because he kind of shitted on their mission. So they could have potentially said, no, we don't want to get acquired. And a C Corp does not have any of those protections. So any public C Corp is 100% open for any acquisition, even if the company that is acquiring it is going to completely destroy the mission that they're on. So a B Corp is actually good. Restructures happen all the time. I'm not worried about restructuring. I'm more worried about the attrition. I think that what you see in big companies, what you see things delivered, are usually the work that has been done 3 months ago or 6 months ago. So attrition that we're seeing right now will hurt us in 3 to 6 months. So there's like a delayed effect of this. And I'm worried about that because like these people are clearly very, very smart and very influential in the company. And them leaving the company will have a delayed effect. So what will happen in the market is that people will say, oh, they left, they continue to deliver, not knowing that what they're delivering is basically what they've built 1 or 2 quarters ago. The last thing I'll say about these trio is that like raising $100 billion sounds to me insane because like, how do you calculate the return on that? Sam Altman needs to promise trillions and trillions of dollars for these funds to actually make the money. Basically, he's telling them that he's going to own every software in the world. That merits that type of investment because if not, I don't understand how you make money and multiply on $100 billion investment.
So let me engage with 2 of those topics, the attrition and the return on investment. I think the benign explanation here is that these people signed up for a research company and they're now part of a for-profit commercial enterprise. That's a possible benign explanation. And I think there's maybe a 10% chance that that's the reason. I think the more craven or cynical or likely explanation is not some crazy internal turmoil. I think that these people are seeing billions of dollars on the table for each of them personally. And they're like, why do I need to stay in this wrapper in Sam Altman's, playhouse when I could step out like Ilya did and raise billions of dollars for myself and run my own show? And so I think the rapid valuation increase and the commensurate increase in their personal value is connected to this. They're like, man, we can ditch this thing and we can personally just grab billions of dollars on the speaking circuit, on other companies, as advisors or fractional executives, or as founders of their own thing. There is just money going to be thrown at them from everywhere. And I actually think that that's a meaningful reason that I don't think people are talking enough about.
So I don't think that I wouldn't bet on that, because I think if you are on a rocket ship, it's really, really hard to leave a rocket ship. When I was at Slack in the early days, nobody left. The company was doing great. Everybody's doing great. You leave because you have a shitty manager. You leave because you are disencouraged by the company. You leave because there's a crazy, amazing opportunity somewhere else, not to become a consultant for a partial executive.
No, I don't. I think it's not the same thing, Amir. I think when Slack or when Uber or when, Meta was on the rise, there wasn't some monumental platform shift where anyone and their dog wanted to pay for this kind of expertise. And that expertise was so tightly concentrated in such a small group of people. I mean, you only have to look at our last story today where Google hired an AI Rockstar back for $2.7 billion with a B. Elia raised billions of dollars for his company that when he left OpenAI with nothing, like probably not even a pitch deck. He probably didn't even walk into a VC pitch, right? And so there's a difference between being an executive at Uber or Slack or whatever and saying, haha, I'm leaving to go do my next thing. Give me billions of dollars. That's not what would have happened. But I think that is going to happen for Mira Murati. And it did happen for Elio.
But they are changing the world. It's really hard to leave something that has such a big impact on the world, unless there. You might be right, and we'll never know. We might never know. My bet is that people leave because of the mundane, shittiest thing that all of us deal with. A shitty manager.
I think that's true, except when you start talking about millions and billions of dollars for someone's personal pocket. Just think, right? If you have the best manager in the history of the world at the most important company in the history of the world, and someone says to you, hey man, I would give you like $1 billion or $2 billion to come and run this other thing. You get to continue to work on AI, and it works, it doesn't, it doesn't. Would you leave for that?
Probably I would, but my bet is that they couldn't deal with Sam Altman. It became toxic, and that they left because what drives people to leave in all places. You start hating your job, you start hating your manager, you start hating what you do, and there's a lot of opportunity. To your point, there's a lot more opportunity. But I think the push is stronger than the pull. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Okay, well, Sam tweeted about this, obviously, and he's saying, all the things that he's said before and that anyone in his position would say. They've been instrumental to OpenAI's progress, and they're leaving it stronger than ever, and we're saddened by their departure. Yeah. But of course, support their decision, all of the general nonsense. Look, what else is he going to say? Or what else is he going to do? I do agree. I would say it's probably something like 80-20. I think they signed up for a research company or a certain kind of carefulness in their execution. That's what they signed up for. Sam has decided to rotate this to being an incredibly commercial and aggressive company. So they're unhappy about the mission change, and they're being offered millions and billions of dollars to go elsewhere. And I think it only needs to be one of those two things ultimately. But I don't think we'll ever hear, Mira Murati say, oh yeah, I left because I was being offered billions of dollars. So they're never going to admit that. But I do think that's an important part of the equation. All right, those are our thoughts about OpenAI's corporate structure and their executives quitting and all that stuff. What do you guys think? Is 7% too much equity for Sam Altman? Does he deserve that much? Why are these executives leaving? They keep leaving. What is really going on there? And ultimately, what do you think OpenAI should do about it in the long term? Are they going to be just fine, or is this really the beginning of the end? Jump in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. All right. Now, let's finally move on from OpenAI. It's been the OpenAI show so far. Let's move just a little bit adjacent from that and talk about a little bit of something that I just touched on, actually, which is Google just hired back an AI Rockstar for $2.7 billion, further to my points just a little bit earlier. They just hired back a guy called Noam Shazir, who left Google earlier out of frustration. And so in order to kind of bolster their bench and get him back inside, they basically paid him a crap ton of money. It's basically like a signing bonus to come join Google again, $2.7 billion. So I don't know how much there is to say about this exactly, except to say what I just said earlier, which is there is a small group of very well-known people, in this case, a 48-year-old engineer, and those people are worth their weight in not even gold, in like something quite a bit more valuable than gold, maybe in Bitcoin token, in Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, is there anything more to say on this, Amir, than what we just talked about in the context of OpenAI executives?
I think if you live in the Silicon Valley, you run into these people from time to time. These people that have the capabilities that are magical, or maybe just 1% of all top engineers actually get there. When we at Slack had this moment where IBM was buying our stuff and all the big enterprises started using our stuff, we ran into scalable problems in a way that no startup that is not going like crazy up and to the right is running. So we stole an infrastructure engineer from Facebook who actually dealt with crazy scale issues. So I think like if you work in the Silicon Valley, you run into these people that have very, very specific skill set that only a very small portion of the world has. And it usually is around like subject matter expertise around scale, around AI, around any other very, very specific technology. I have a friend who's doing that out of a place where he's basically retired on garbage collection of Java. So I think every topic has this like very, very top 1% that companies would pay unlimited amount of zeros to get that person in, because they're not the 10xers, they're the 1000xers. They drive your business 1,000 times more than any other employee. So they're actually worth that money.
This is a really good topic just to talk about as a little bit of an EDU subject, right? An educational subject for founders listening. We've mentioned this on the show before, both on Reacts episodes and EDU episodes, the value of a 10xer and the value of a 1000xer, right? You know, Steve Jobs is famous for saying, great people are not just a little bit better, they're a lot better, right? A lot better. And if you've listened through the back catalog, you probably heard me say a few times, I've seen teams do things in a week that other teams took months and months to do. And they did it worse over those months than the team that did it in a week. And I'm always quick to say that's not an exaggeration. That's not like hyperbole, right?
No. You have all the time.
You say that, you know, these people are very valuable and companies are willing to pay a lot of money for them. I would say in my experience, Amir, outside of Silicon Valley and outside of certain circles, that's not true. They're not willing to or don't know how to identify these 10xers and 100xers, and they don't know just how much they're worth. And so I've been involved in conversations, hiring conversations where people would say, well, geez, you know, they're asking for a lot more money than other peers in their function, right? And we just can't justify that, or it won't be fair. And we'll have to start paying others more than they're being paid now. And all of this kind of egalitarian nonsense that doesn't make any sense.
It's so stupid. So stupid.
You know, I've also been on the record on this show in the past to say, I think actually there is a 1% of product managers and product leaders out there. And they're a little bit like the top directors in the world, because product management is kind of like directing a film or conducting an orchestra. There is the very best, and then there's everybody else. And again, that's not a very egalitarian or popular or, you know, democratic thing for me to say. but I believe it to be true. And so when you find incredible product leaders, incredible engineering leaders, incredible people that can unlock incredible growth and momentum and pay off for you or help you avoid incredible opportunity cost and differentiation from your competitors, man, you need to think seriously about how much that's worth to your company. I actually tweeted the other day, how much is success worth? Or in this case, how much is massively increasing the probability of success and the rate of execution worth? I mean, it's close to priceless for many companies, especially if the company doesn't have many 10xers in there amongst their ranks. And so, yeah, very, very valuable.
100%. And like, if you look at it, another thing that people don't think about is that those 10xers, those 1000xers, they bring with them other 10xers.
Bingo.
10xers like to work with each other. 1000xers like to work with each other, so that you're not just making your company better by one person, you're basically changing the DNA of your company. It's just a little bit like not firing a toxic person. Everybody becomes toxic after a while. If you hire a very, very productive person, people look up to them, people moved in a different velocity. It's the best thing that you could do for your company.
And the reverse, if you tolerate low performers or assholes, as you said, with toxicity, but especially low performance, everyone will go, well, he's sticking around, she's sticking around, and he's not trying that hard, then she's not that good. Why do I need to try any harder, right? And, it's difficult to tell this anecdote without sounding like I'm full of myself, but like I've helped companies interview people like, AAA players, 10xers, whatever you want to call them. And they've literally said to me, Chris, I'm not sure. Are you sticking around? Like, I don't know that I'd be joining this company if you weren't the one talking to me. Now, again, this probably sounds incredibly arrogant, but it's not about me. It's about other people that are in this position who are able to speak a certain language or have a certain resume or give a certain kind of insight. The person in the interview loop is looking for that. They're looking for that. Amir, I'm sure the same would happen for you, for Yanev, for Emil, a lot of people. And so you need to, as you said, it's very much accretive. You're 100% right. One great person will bring in other great people, increase the bar, increase the average of the whole team. All right, those are our thoughts about Google's new hire. What do you think? Is anybody worth $2.7 billion? Would you ever pay a huge premium for a 10xer, a 100xer, a 1000xer? Is it worth it? Or are you quite happy with your team? You're going to learn on the job and get it done for yourselves. Jump in the comments and let us know. Let's move on to our last topic here, which is Meta Connect just occurred this past week as well. And they announced really a whole slew of stuff, including the Meta Quest 3S, which is an incredibly cheap AR, VR, mixed reality goggles. They're really trying to stick it to Apple and their Vision Pro. And they announced just a whole slew of stuff. But for me, the thing that was most interesting is their Orion AR glasses prototypes, which if you heard our last Reacts episode, we were talking about Snapchat's spectacles, and we were making fun of them a little bit. They looked a bit weird. And I was saying actually that Snap does not have a reputation or I think the capacity to become a platform company, and I think that's going to hold them back. Literally a few days later, Facebook, or Meta rather, said, hold my beer, take a look at these. And they kind of just look like really nerdy glasses. The rims and the arms are just a little too thick. Maybe let's say 20, 30, 50% too thick. But for all intents and purposes, these look like, they're not because there's a little separate computing device, but they look like self-contained computing devices with augmented reality lenses. And I've been predicting this is going to happen in 5 years, 10 years. As I said earlier at the beginning of the show, you can't predict exponentials, or most people can't. And I mean, this is out. The prototype is in the wild. People are trying it. I think they have 100 or 1,000 of these prototypes, and they're probably going to release it in 12, 24, 48 months. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Did you check this out, Amir? What did you take away?
My reaction is like, I asked myself, how fast will this replace the phone? And if that is the case, how fast will this become the most lucrative platform out there? Because I think phones are miserable. They make us look like assholes when we talk to people and we check something on our phone. It takes us away from reality. And if we could make reality better by augmentation, I think that'll be amazing. And I think it will create a new UI model that I'm really interested in thinking about. It will create this conversational interface that you will have with your phone that is really intriguing to me, because I think now we also have the technology to support true conversational interfaces, like buy milk in the supermarket. Now I can do that with a AI that actually understand the context where I live and that I buy in HEB and not in Costco and stuff like that. So I think we're going to see the convergence of this medium together with a platform, together with a bunch of technologies that will make this extremely, extremely exciting future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Many episodes ago, my prediction was that glasses and headphones are the form factor for AI. To me, this seems kind of in the camp of no shit. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that revelatory an observation. But, people disagreed with me then, to some degree, and I think people will still be a little bit dumbfounded and curious. I just think it's just silly. Headphones, especially, earpods like this, and glasses, smart glasses are the name of the game. I don't think they will fully disrupt phones. I think having a sheet of glass in your pocket that will allow high bandwidth physical input and manipulation of a UI will always be relevant. But I think you'll move from, 100% phone or like 90% phone, 10% PC to like 80% glasses or earbuds, and 5% phone, 5% PC, something like that. That's probably a bit over the top, but I think PC will be really great for high productivity, sit down, do work. Phone will be for those moments, just moments during your day where you need to, touch something and manipulate something on a screen. And then the most of that will be the glasses and earpods.
Did you see the wristband that they released? That is amazing.
Yeah, they have what they called a neural.
Yeah.
Yeah, they called that a neural interface, which is a pretty cute thing because yes, it's a neural interface in the sense that it's detecting signals from your brain, but it's on your wrist. So, by that broad definition, your fingers are a neural interface on the screen of an iPhone. But yeah.
It's a wrapper over your brain.
It's a wrapper over your brain. Oh my God, that's nicely done. So yeah, you're right. I think actually with that quote unquote neural interface, even some of the phone use cases may even go away. I also agree with you. Voice is going to be a massive, massive part of that interaction modality. There is one little thing I'm not seeing anybody talk about. And I think on this show, we're always trying to dig up what are the people not talking about? Who are the individuals at these big monolithic companies and how do we tease out their personalities and their proclivities? And then also what are the things that, you can get most tech news from most other places, but I'm trying to find things that are a little bit left of center for us to talk about. And for me, I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about this little thing, which is, yes, we're not going to look like assholes, to use your point, Amir, staring at our phones all day. But I do think there's going to be this phenomena of people walking around staring at the middle distance all day. And you're going to be, when you talk to someone at a party or an event, you're just never going to quite be sure if they're paying attention to you or their glasses. And I think, well, the worst case is you'll never quite be sure. The best case is you will know because you'll see their lens kind of just shift to the middle distance and you'll be like, fuck, can you stop looking at your data and look at me? I think that will be in the same category of annoying, and it will be in the same category of confronting or mediating our relationships with people. So I don't think this weird phenomena that we're engaged in where we context switch between our information layer, our what do they call it? A noososphere? Between the data layer and the real layer, the real world. And I don't know that there's a real solution for that, except maybe neural implants there where the data is just flooding into your brain and like a thought. Maybe that's the real solution there.
I think there's another solution, probably not going to be effective, but might be mandatory, probably in Europe, is a light that says, is there information passing or is this conversation being recorded? So like if the corner of your dash would have a certain light so that I know if you're looking at data and I know if you're recording me, then it might be an interesting UI element to, and wrap it with culture and with a combination of like, how does the new generation like to be disconnected to some degree, although they're failing at it miserably. I think there's going to be a cultural shift that is aligned with this new technology.
I really like that idea, in not just a light if you're being recorded and not even a light if there's data. I think there's always going to be data actually on those bloody screens. I think you could trigger a light with the retina detection, with the iris detection, it detects that you have shifted your gaze from past the screens to the screen.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get a sense that, oh, the user is currently checking the screen. However, I think that's possible. I don't think that will happen. I think the idea will be this, the selling point will be you can have this casual glanceability of information without people knowing. Of course, they will, because they can tell that you've shifted your gaze. But I don't think they're going to want to hang a lantern on it, which is, to borrow a phrase from Hollywood, which is to point out the lack of attention that this user is giving you. I think they're going to want to try to make it more subtle, not less subtle. They will, of course, though, maintain the convention that if you're being recorded, I think a privacy light will be absolutely part of the mix.
I have a killer application that I want to happen where I go to social events and somebody comes to me and say, "Hey, I'm here," and I have no idea who they are, to have like a
Yes.
bubble next to them to say, "Hey, you met this person at this event." And I think that'll be immensely useful, maybe even slightly more connective, so that if you can get context on conversation, on things that you said, on jokes that you made, maybe don't make the same dad joke to your kids 5 times in a row in the same week. So like these type of things. So I agree with you. There's going to be a sad part of us being maybe a little bit more disconnected, but maybe also a connective tissue that will help us add that context into our memory, which is pretty bad most of the time.
Yeah, I've long dreamed of that exact same use case, Amir. We should stop recording immediately and start a new company. I do think this is one of the killer use cases of AR. I can admit, I have a little bit of social anxiety about not remembering people's faces, or rather, not remembering their names.
Yeah.
And I know that I've met them, and I can't remember the context. I can't remember the name. I can't remember, where we left it. And I'm a little bit embarrassed by that sometimes. And so it would be very valuable for me. I will say, though, it will have this interesting phenomena of us offloading that part of our cognition to these devices
We will
even
not
more.
remember any name ever again. It's just
Right.
like when we moved from like the dumb phone to the smartphone, I stopped knowing people's phone numbers. I still
Right.
remember my old phone number from like 30 years ago and my friends' phone numbers, but none of my new friends, I know their phone numbers, right? And they do have a phone number. So I totally agree. We will be a culture with no names or no names.
That's right. And I still remember my ICQ number from back in the
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
but I don't remember anything else. The other day, I forgot my password, which I just set the day before. So yeah, it's my memory has gone to hell. Now, part of this is just old age, but just speaking about that outsourcing cognition, I have realized recently, maybe a combination because of me getting older and ChatGPT's existence. I used to be very good, if I do say so myself, at hearing a topic and just like rattling off 5 or 10 subtopics or facets that we have to dig into, let's say in a business meeting, and kind of thinking through, oh yeah, that's got 5 or 7 things. We should break it down this way. And I have found myself finding it more difficult to do that and more quickly reaching for ChatGPT to basically give me like an agenda or a space exploration, like rattle off the 17 things I need to think about in this category. I don't know if that's just I'm getting old, I'm getting tired, or it's just ChatGPT is training me to outsource my thinking.
I think if you look at every technology that makes our life easier, we opt in for that opportunity and we lost that skill. We're not hunters gatherers. We don't know how to wash our dishes even manually from some people here. And I think all these technologies made our life better, but also made our skills worse. So I think like me going now back to work on the yard is actually amazing because you learn new skills. And I think we need to have a combination as a culture of doing things ourselves and doing things that are not useful.
Yeah, there's been many a sci-fi episode written about, probably 10 Star Trek episodes written about these colonies where they eschew technology, right? They say, there's a line I'm thinking of specifically from, I think, a Deep Space Nine episode where they say, we believe when you create a technology to replace the work of a man, you take something away from the man. Actually, I think it's from Star Trek Insurrection. I am such a nerd. I'm sorry, guys. And, that's the philosophy, right, is that it takes away from people. But, I think it's interesting. If you just go back to one of the first things humans needed to do and which is to defend themselves, right? To throw spears. And that took muscle. It took effort. It took training. And now we have guns, which takes just the muscle twitch, and we're essentially throwing a rock, right? We're basically throwing a high velocity rock that is in a way disconnected from our muscle capacity. And, bicycles for the brain, as Steve Jobs said, with computers, on and on and on. These are all just tools that supercharge our human capacity. Now, there's a question, right? Well, if you don't need all that muscle and you just need a twitch of your finger, is that taking away or is that augmenting? And where is that line? And if we don't need it anymore, then why do we bother exercising it? Look, I think it's on a case-by-case basis. I think it also speaks to your philosophy, existential questions about where are we all headed? Are we going to be those fat creatures that are living on those hover chairs in WALL-E, just switching from blue to red clothes every other day? These things tend to end up in the middle somewhere, where the tensions between the left and the right, the up and the down, the lazy and the productive, people tend to find a middle, and society tends to find a spectrum. So,
yeah, I'm hopeful.
I think we'll be fine.
Yes.
All right, those are our thoughts about some of the announcements at Meta Connect, especially the Orion AR glasses. What do you guys think? Has it been obvious from the beginning that earpods and glasses are the future of AR and AI? Or is there still another form factor to be announced? Are we crazy about this weird staring into the middle distance, or is it going to be just fine and people are just going to get over it? Tell us what you think down in the comments. All right, Amir. Well, another fun, fascinating conversation with a mix of pragmatism, personalities,
and
APIs, and decent science fiction. Where else on the planet can you get this kind of conversation? Nowhere, I think. But thank you for joining me as always. Where can people find you on the internet?
So they can find me on Twitter. They can find me at my VC, darkmode.vc, and they can find me on LinkedIn as Amir Shevat.
Awesome. And you can find me on all the social media at Chris Saad, or on my website, chrissaad.com, and my newsletter, chrissaad.com/newsletter. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening in and getting this far in the episode. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to spread the word about the show. It helps us grow and help more founders like you. All right. Catch you next week.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Today's episode of the Startup Podcast was brought to you by Vanta. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies already use Vanta. Why don't you? Get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's VANTA.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off.